Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to put together the Acorn House SVG file from Simply Crafty SVGs. So I just want to show you a couple pieces first. So that part's for the house. I made it brown for a purpose, but you could make it yellow, the base, if you wanted to without the panels. And then this is the roof piece with the chimney. That's a little chimney piece, and that's the top of the roof, which is the stem of the acorn, and the rest of the roof pieces. These are the roof panels, and these are the side house panels with the vellum panels. So I already put on the vellum. Now here's an option. I didn't show you this, but I put it on the back of the panel, which some people don't want to do, but we're going to put beside the door one. But I put some of them on the back of the panels already. Some people might prefer to put it on the inside of the house once it's built, so just keep that in mind. That's up to you. So I'm just going to add this piece, and the reason why you might want to put it on inside are for different reasons. It's to match up the panels better. So it doesn't really matter, so you could either add it to the back of these or the back of the actual house pieces when we put the house together, which are the brown pieces I first showed you. But it just, you can't see through it. If mine has a pattern on it, you can't see through it very well to match up the holes. That's the only difference. But it's not a big deal. It'll pretty much match up. And I did ink the edges because it was white, and then tried to curl them a little bit just at the bottom because there's a curve on the bottom of that acorn. So you can do that ahead of time. Be careful with this piece because it's pretty fragile in here. When you put this on, when you glue that on, you want to put little dots of glue, maybe just little amounts if you do the vellum there, just to hold it down, to hold those little long pieces down. You don't want to, otherwise they'll flip up on you. But that's pretty repetitive, so I didn't feel we needed to show you every detail of that part. And again, this will be done later, so just don't do anything to the door. So now I'm going to show you how to put together the chimney. So we're going to start with the chimney and the roof. So you can see it's a little piece, and you want to fold on the score lines shown. And I kind of go back and forth because some parts fold out, some fold in. Some are mountain folds, some are valley folds. So just get it a little loose so you can bend it and make sure your tabs are good, and you have a good score on your tab folds. So we just go around. We're going to match that edge to the tab fold there for the first one. So you're just matching that edge up. I know it's black and it's hard to see, that's why I tried to zoom in. So I'm just putting glue on the second tab down. And that one comes, you can kind of see how it goes. So you just want to match it up. It'll take form. But you do want to hold it a little bit as long as your glue needs to dry before you move on, because you don't want to pull it apart as you're doing the next section. So I find it helpful to go from the top to the bottom and hold it for a couple seconds or more. And this is sped up just a little bit because I'm a very slow crafter. So that's the only reason I speed it up a little bit. And I don't think you want me talking to you for, it's going to be over an hour anyways, but it's a long time. And if this goes too fast for you, you could always pause it. So again, this is just all repetitive. And be careful, make sure you have a little wet paper towel or cloth or something nearby so you can wipe your fingers, because if you are working on a piece like this, you don't want the glue to get on your fingers, else it's going to get on the chimney. And that's with anything really. So I always have a little wet paper towel, which shows up in my videos, and it's needed because I get a lot of glue on my fingers. And that little skinny piece on top to close it, you just want to kind of match it up. You're going to hold it. And it kind of angles inward, that top of that chimney. And then just go ahead. As you just match each of the edges, it kind of takes form. It's as long as you have enough give in those folds. So that's one thing. If you're using a Cricut, you know, the dash line version sometimes works better because the score, the maker doesn't really score. The maker and the explorer, the scoring tools and the score wheel on the makers and explorers, I don't think they score deep enough for most 3D designs, especially elaborate ones. So I'm just kind of reaching in with my little fine tip applicator to get a little missed part there. So that's what it looks like finished. You can see the angle, and I'm kind of pulling it outward because that'll just kind of loosen it up for when we glue it to the roof. But now we can get good and dry because we're going to put that aside. So now we have the roof. So we have this weird octopus type of thing here. And this is what we're putting together, this top thing with the little angle at the bottom. So you can see how we need to fold it. So try to fold it on the scores. Just get it loose a little bit on the straight parts, because there is a little bit of fold here, score here and there. And you can see I have a valley fold there, so I'm just going to do this one fresh. You fold it there, fold it down to the big tab, and then I fold it backward right there. You can kind of see. So you kind of want to get that good and folded and ready to put together. And that I'm just loosening up these tabs because eventually we will glue that to the inside of the roof. As we do the edge of the roof, that will actually glue to the center of it underneath. So now that we have it folded the way we want, you really could start anywhere. The biggest thing to be aware of is that this thing will bend in some areas, and I kept it as one piece to make it easier. So we're just going ahead and getting that first, starting from the top, because that's the easiest. If you start from the other side, things may go awry. So I glued that first tab, and then I'm going to add glue to the other tabs, and then we're just going to do it one tab at a time. So we're just lining up that edge to the tab fold. And this one, just know that it's going to bend a little bit in places. So depending on where you start, so you can see this is kind of where on the outside of a bend, rather than on the inside, because you know it bends to one side. So kind of the folds are going to help you. It dictates, the scores actually dictate which way it goes. And if you watch this, and you can watch this before you do it, I mean, unless you're really comfortable with it, but some may not be so comfortable, but be patient with it. You know, it does take time if this is one of the first things you're doing that's 3D. I wouldn't recommend this as the first. But when you're gluing this too, I would say you could do one tab at a time, but I was able to do these first 4 tabs up to that valley fold, that inward fold, that down towards that where it kind of becomes the base of the acorn. And the reason I did that is that it's just easier to do all 4 at once, and then it's a good stopping point, and then you can add glue to the other tabs. But if you are new to 3D projects, I have a new fine tip applicator too. I'll let you know if it's any good. I mean, I can put the link, but I'm still playing around with it. But if you're interested, you can always email me. But I think I'm going to omit it for now until I know it's good. But I'm jumping around. Jeez. If you're new, I would say just try some free 3D boxes first. And I do have some 3D freebies that are smaller, but they give you the idea of how things fold. Like the circular freebie pumpkin. That's a good thing if you're not used to doing putting together circular items. Or spherical. Sphere-like. That didn't sound right, I know. So I'm just trying to keep you entertained while you see me put this together. So it's just repetitive. The hardest part for this, and I tend to do the most difficult, tedious things first on a project. So if you want to get the less tedious, you can always jump around. That's up to you. I do it because as you go through a project, or at least me, I get tired at the end. So I like to get the things out of the way that are a little bit more difficult when I'm fresh. So the only thing really hard on this, if you understand how this just just gluing them down is really not that bad if you take your time. But it's when it gets to the last piece, because it gets quite narrow in there. You can get your finger in there, and I have little pudgy fingers, so if I can get my finger in there, most other people, but somebody that, if it were a man that were doing this, it might be difficult. So you'll see how I close it up, because we're almost to the last piece here. So I'm just making sure that I match it up. So this is where it's kind of starting to bend inward, like bend over the bending part on the inside. So you kind of have to move it around to match that edge up to the tab fold of the left side. I just want to make sure everything is good and secure before I go to this last part. So I'm just flipping all these tabs in. And I'm flipping the tabs in on the other one too, on the very last piece that we need to glue on. Because what I'm going to do is add glue to the 4 tabs here, and then the 4 tabs on the other one. So we're going to do it to this last one that's kind of outward. And what I'm doing is I'm spreading apart the opening for the opening that we have there. Because I'm going to gently fold it down into this opening without getting the glue on the outside. So I'm just kind of opened it up with my fingers to get it down, and I'm gently kind of pushing it in. Now I'm feeling, and I'm doing what I did before on that one side. So I'm just applying pressure on each tab. I'm just reaching in. And I'm doing the same on the other side pretty quickly. So you can kind of reach in, make sure it's moving. You kind of can move it around and adjust it to make sure that that tab fold meets the edge. And if it's not perfect, it's not a big deal. It's organic matter anyways, right? An acorn? So just do the best you can, but you can see I just kind of continually reach in and apply pressure. And then if you need to, you can use something like the chopstick. That's a wooden chopstick. And I'm just kind of using it to give me the pressure on the inside so I didn't have to reach in. So now I'm going to add glue to these last 3 tabs. There's 2 sets of 3 tabs, but we'll start with this one. I'm just adding a little dab and glue in here because on this last tab I didn't get it adhered very well. This is the same too on the, you'll see me do that again, but that's where a fine tip applicator. I used to use Dare Reese until recently. Hopefully they will change how they're manufacturing them. So I switched to this generic brand and I'm testing it, but I use it with my art glitter glue. It's the only glue that will fit in there because the opening's so small. But it helps to be able to get in there. But I've been having problems with the other applicators, so I switched to this. I don't even know what the brand is. It's kind of a no-name brand. So far so good, but I've only used it for a couple days. So I'm getting those last tabs, and so as it flares open, of course, it's very easy for us to match things up. It was just those tabs at the top in the narrow section. So that should be all ready. And the thing is, I'm going to actually ink it. So I'm going to take my color box Cat's Eye chalk ink. This one's a I'll have the link to it or the information so you know what it is if you want to use it. But I like it because I can get around the edges okay. And I like to ink the edges of where I put things together sometimes, because it does twofold. It kind of gives it a little bit more dimension, but it also hides any kind of imperfections if you don't line it up perfectly. And I think it enhances it. Just gives it a little extra detail. So we'll put that aside, and then we'll work on the rest of the roof. We'll just go ahead and just showing you how you fold these pieces on the scores. So I just started with the chimney piece, which is that little hole. So this is fairly simple. This is kind of a weird piece, but this is this side is actually two pieces. But you can see how it folds, and then we have these little tabs on the side here of that opening. I'll make that little gable window thing at the top. I don't have my terminology down. I should know what exactly that is. I call it a gable window, though. I'm sure I do not know what it is. I don't have the right word. But anyways. So I like to get them nice and folded. That's how it's going to go when we put it together. And here's the other piece that goes with it. So right now we're just folding it. And then we'll start assembling. Now we'll start assembling the structure of the roof, so those two will go together at one point. So before this, I just want to show you that it could be attached up here first, which I thought about doing, but attaching it by the bottom two tabs will be better for this. I had a second thought when I was doing this. So, but either way, you could do it. It doesn't really matter as long as you understand how it goes together. So I'm going ahead and matching up that edge just right up to the fold. You don't want to do it over the fold. You just want to do it right to, or if you needed to do, just slightly under. So I was adding glue to these little side tabs, the ones we folded back, and I'll show you. I'm going to move it around in a minute so you can see it a little bit better. But this side right here, so it's the tabs to the right and left of the opening, the window opening. So that's that. So I think as you see it, it gets a little bit more familiar, so you may have to pause it or watch it and reverse it. I tried to get the right angles here, but it's not always possible. So I have to put a little bit more glue because it dried up on me, so I'm just kind of scraping away the dried up stuff. And then gently fold that down. So I'm really applying some pressure there because I want to make sure that I get it as close as possible. And then I had some excess glue. And when I put everything together, I inked that anyways. But If you have a little wet paper towel, you can get that excess off. See, it's coming together. So now you can either glue the sides there first or glue that top piece. So you can see that just kind of fits right in there. So I'm going to do these little side tabs. And then we'll do that on both sides and then glue that top tab. And it goes together fairly well. I mean, I have more complicated designs that I've done. I was actually pleased how well that one came together. It's something, as of this video, it depends when you watch the video, but as of this project, this was the first type of, I haven't done a lot of houses, so I'm just trying to figure out how things go together and if I can make it easy, because that's one of the things I wanted to do. I didn't want to make anything way too complicated when I started designing, so but I tend to get a little complicated on some. Depends on the shape. Round shapes do take more time, that's for sure. So that's done. So I'm getting the most complicated portion of the roof section done. So we're just going to go ahead and glue them on the sides here. So I decided you can put the chimney any way you want. So just know that you don't have to put it like this. So you can put any panel to the right or left. If you want to put the chimney on the back of the house, you can put the chimney on the back of the house. So, but whatever you choose, I usually just anchor the first tab. And then I kind of hold it as I add glue to the other tabs. And you can add glue to all the tabs, or you can add them to part and then just go in and get the rest of them. I find for me I can do all of them at once, but it just depends on how what works for you. So if you only need to do 2 or 3 at a time, that's up to you. But you want to go from the top to the bottom, tab by tab, lining it up as you go. But again, this has some, I think sometimes because it's uniform, all the panels are the same size, you don't need to, they can be in any order you want. So like I said, if you want the chimney on the left, you put the one with the chimney hole right there with that little square hole to the left of that opening. If you want it in the back of the house, you can put it in the back. So, and if you didn't want a chimney at all, you would just cut out another solid piece. That's a little bit more challenging. You just have to know your software a little bit, but you could. So this one I just kind of did the half and half, so you can see that you could do part of them and then the rest. And then we're going to go ahead and finish attaching the other pieces. And I'm going to resume once we get to the last piece so I can show you how I closed it up. So I added the other pieces. So now we have this piece, and we just need to glue this last side. As with any kind of circular design, closing it up is always the hardest, but I usually add glue to all the tabs if this is a good size for that. Then I try to anchor the top one, and then the bottom one. Sometimes I can just run it along, but it depends on the shape. So you can try to go tab by tab, but I do the bottom one too. At least for this one, it worked really well for me. And then once I get those two anchored, I can reach in and kind of gently guide them and get them into place before I apply pressure on the tab. So just kind of reach in the various areas and apply pressure. And there's the the body of the roof. Now we're going to put on the panels. So with the opening, the ones with the openings, I'm going to put the panels on. There's a slight border, little bit of a extra room around the openings. So it's not exactly the same, so you can be off a little bit. But you might want to just curl it a little bit, and I'm just using a little scoring stylus thing that I have, but anything around will work. Or you could use a wooden dowel or anything like that. I just happen to have that. We have a lot of crafting tools that are around. So we don't really, for me, it's funny because I have a bunch of tools, but there's my hand. You can do it by your hand too. I wanted to show you that. But sometimes just one tool can do like multiple things. So I just think sometimes I get caught up in the marketing it all, but I have things that work. And I end up buying additional tools that I didn't need. So I'm not here to make money by... I have Amazon links, which I have on my product page and YouTube videos and all that. But the reason I do that is more of a service than me trying to make any money. I just want people to know if they're interested in what I use, they can use it too. But I like to give you alternatives too, because I know how it is to want to save money. So when we're putting on the panels, the ones with the openings, I put a little bit of glue around the opening, but I mostly put the glue on a little bit on the sides and then a little bit more on the top and bottom. And you can start at the top or bottom, but I kind of start at the top and then I kind of adjust it a little bit until it matches up on the bottom. And then I can apply pressure to the edges. The sides. And as I stated earlier, there's a little bit of extra space for the openings, so it won't be a tight fit. You'll have a little bit of a loose fit. Not loose fit, but just it gives you enough space so you can easily, like for this, slide it over. So you just continue to put all those on there. So you'll probably want to take a little time, make sure that you get them good and secure. Losing my words right now. Because a lot of times I rush, or I don't rush. I mean, because I design it's a little bit different. Sometimes I'm doing a lot of tests. But if you rush, especially in curved surfaces, sometimes just a piece will like flip up or whatever, or it might flip up because I didn't apply pressure long enough, especially embossed panels, because this is embossed with a leaves embossing folder from Sizzix. Then we'll just continue to add the remaining panels. So now I did forget to put the little vellum panel inside, so it can go inside or it can go on the outside. Because I didn't put it on the inside before I assembled it, I'm going to get it and we'll put the frame on and the vellum panel at the same time. So I have my little embellishment bowl that I hold all these little small items. So we're going to put this on, and then, so that goes right there. But if you want the vellum panel, which you don't have to have it, but the light glows through it well if you put a battery operated candle or tea light in there. So if you put it inside, it'll fit inside. So you could do the vellum inside or outside. So we'll go ahead and glue that frame to the vellum piece, and then glue it to the front of that little gable window. If you do like our projects, I would love it if you could actually do a thumbs up on the video. Of course, if you don't like the video, you don't have a thumbs up at all. But so here I just lightly put some glue. And then if you're not subscribed, it'll keep you informed of updates if you do subscribe and you come onto your YouTube channel. So that's up to you. But I do appreciate it. So now we've got it glued. We'll go ahead and attach to the front. So just do a light line of glue around there, because you don't want it getting on the vellum, but fortunately we have that rather large frame portion. Then you'll just want to apply a lot of pressure, make sure it's secure and flat as possible before you move on to the next step. And I even flipped it over and applied pressure against the table, so you can do that as well. And then we'll move on to the chimney. So now we have that little hole, and we have this chimney piece with 4 tabs. We're just going to slide it in. You want to make sure that it's angled outward. As you can see how it's angled. Once we have those in there, remember we've already trained the tab folds a little bit so they'll bend backwards. So we're going to attach one tab to the inside. So I know I'm a little bit off camera, but we're just gluing that tab to the inside and applying pressure on the outside as well as the inside. And then what works for me is to glue the opposite side tab and then the 2 remaining tabs. The one thing I want to note, some people might, after you glue all this, you see all these tabs and stuff inside. Well, it's really up to you. I mean, if you're giving this as a gift, you could duplicate the top roof panels and cover everything on the inside. That's up to you. I tend not to, because if I'm doing it for my house, I'm the only one who's going to see it. So if you want to do that, that would be my recommendation if somebody wanted to cover those. And it wouldn't cover the, you would want to do it kind of the last part because after you put the top on. But some people might not want to see that. That's when it comes to understanding your software, and then you start kind of customizing others. So that's what it looks like finished. But also, if you cover it, then the light won't, well, the light would come through because it has a hole in the panel, so you'd be okay. I was thinking the light wouldn't come through the chimney, because it kind of does a little bit. So here's the middle part now. So I kind of slide it through the bottom, and I'm just arranging it how I want it to go. So I would always say you probably want from the front to have it lean to the right or left. So I'm going to have it lean towards the left. So before you glue this first tab, so we're doing the same things we did the chimney. We're just anchoring one of the tabs. You want to carefully line it up to the edge that you want. So I'm just rotating it because I didn't have it right. Paying attention to the curve. So I'm lining it up, that edge to the tab fold. And just applying pressure for that tab. And then as we did with the chimney, we'll do the glue on the opposite tab and then the other 4. And now that that's on, we'll go ahead and add the little roof to the top of that window. So it is, actually I didn't want to score it traditionally, so it has dashed lines in it to cut out for the scores. So you can barely see it, but I just did that for that piece, and that's how it goes on. And it has an overhang in the front, so you want to line it up in the back when you glue it on. Then I went a little heavy on the glue. I mean, put enough there, but for some reason every project I go overboard on glue at one point in time. It's inevitable. So just line up the back part. You can see it's folded that way. So those rounded front corners will be in the front. So it's just better just to line up the top first and then apply pressure and fold down the sides. Now we'll start folding the house pieces, and you do want to be careful when you come to the pieces with openings. There is one fold that goes through it right there. So I like to get them good and folded on the score lines before I start assembling. One thing I want to note before you put this together, so as you're watching me fold, I have the door in the front, but you really can put the panels in any order you want. So originally when I did this design, I had the intention of putting a window on each side. I'm going to stop and continue, see I get sidetracked with other things. Originally I thought of putting windows on either side, the same window, which is fine, you can do that. So you want to put them in the order that you want to put them on. I mean, I'll show you how I ordered them. But this design, I ended up putting a window on one side and then the cutout of that kind of like little wheat cutout thing. It's kind of you can be leaves or wheat, whatever you want to call it. Anyways, that's up to you. But you can see how I put it together, and you can determine maybe you want to switch things around, but that's something you can do. And I did match up the door frames and door and window frames to this color, as I didn't want to have, I just wanted brown as the base, but you could switch those colors up too. So now we're working on the door jamb. So we're just folding it, curling it. I'm going to curl it the natural way, that texture's on that side. But I'm going to flip it over and curl it the way that I want, because I want the texture to be on the inside of the little door jamb like that. So you can see it on the inside. So when we go ahead, we're going to go ahead and fold all these tabs. Now for the front piece, for the curved side, the tabs can stay folded the way they are, but for the straight side, which will be the side that glues around that door panel there, we'll need to carefully fold them over the other way. That's just so we can have the texture underneath. So we need to fold it the other way so we can glue that to the door. So just carefully fold them the opposite way of the natural score. And you want to get them as crisp as possible so when we glue it around that circular door area, that it glues fine. The other side can be the natural score though. I know they're flipped the other way, but I didn't pay attention to which side I was doing. So again, you want to make sure you're on the straight side first to glue it to the door. So this is how it'll wrap around. So make sure it's the straight side right there. You see that's curved, that's straight. That's the side you want to glue to the door. It's very important. So the curved area will be gluing to the front panel. So I'm going to add glue to these. You could do it on the very first one or a couple, but I'm just lining them up. So I just applied pressure to that first one, and then before it kind of goes in, I'm kind of pushing it in. And then we'll just apply pressure to make sure they're good and secure. There they are. But we'll just keep on going around. So there's two ways to do this. You can do it this way, where you can just add glue to these individual tabs. Actually, there's really three ways, but there's a couple methods to do it. I'm going to add little dabs of glue to these little tabs. And because I have that hole in the middle, it makes it easier for me to do this method, because I can reach through the middle. And I'm just wrapping it around, and I'm just making sure that that edge of that door panel is aligned with the inside fold, and then applying pressure to each tab. And you could also just apply glue to the actual back of the panel, but that can get messy. So this is the other way, which is just adding glue. I'm going to add glue to the rest of the little tabs all the way down to the last one. What I'm going to do is just gently, I'm going to fold those tabs up a little bit, make sure they're folded up after I put glue on them. And then I'm going to just wrap it around. So you just kind of match it, you're just guiding it around the edge, but you still want to go in order of tabs till you get to the last one. Now with any of these things that you do like this, even though it is the exact right size, it could be just a little bit not right to the end, but that's okay. You're not going to be able to see that. So mine was just a smidgen off, but that could happen around in a corner, a curve. Then we're going to go ahead and attach this to this tab on the door panel. So we're just lining that up carefully. So I'm lining that edge up to the fold. We want to make sure that one's good and secure, so it's going to help us anchor it to that piece so we can glue on those front tabs. Now you could put that vellum piece on the back there. That's up to you, but I am going to just glue it to that front panel. Now we can just go ahead and gently guide that through. Then I'm folding back all these tabs. So it does help that they're kind of up in the middle. And for this, I just added glue to each of the individual tabs. Trying to fight with that little thing that hangs down on the glue bottle is something to attach to the top to keep it airtight when it's not in use. So I actually kind of like that. A little hindrance when you're using it, but I try to grab it while I'm using it. So get that first one in place and making sure you're lining up that edge of the front panel to the fold. And then you just keep on going around. And you can see on the other side that it's flat. In this case, usually I just go around in order of the tabs, but in this case I did the other side because it's fairly confident everything was going to line up fine. And it does, by the way. Was that just a long pause or what? And then you can go ahead and add the remaining. So if there's a little glue leakage around this, it's okay because we're going to put a panel over it. So if you just wanted to put glue on the actual panel instead of putting on the tabs, you could. The only reason I don't is because I didn't want a lot of glue on my fingertips because I'm constantly having to clean my fingers off. But that's another way to do it too, because we will be covering that with the panel. And this is the first time I did any technique like this. It was interesting. I like it. I hope others do too. It's really not that hard to put together. I thought it would be a lot harder. Then that'll go right over it. So you can see those tabs will be hidden. So now we're just going to add that little vellum panel to the front door so the light will shine beautifully through it. And that is a pattern vellum. I wish I could tell you where I got it, but I got it at a sale probably about 15 years ago. Yes, I have things that old. It's kind of hard to use pattern vellum, but every once in a while I can on a project that has a little flourish, white flourish patterns on it. I don't think I've seen a lot of printed vellum for many years, but I have some. So you can see I'm just adding a little bit of a glue, a little bit more than I should in there. Just make sure you don't get it on that bottom edge. And just go ahead and just place it in. Which gets it ready to put together the actual house. So now I like to put them in order. So what I intended to do, you can see they're in the order, but but I intended to put a window on the right, but that's okay because you can put it any way you want. So I end up having this little cutout on the right of the door. So this is actually a little bit simpler put together than most rounded. So this is similar to the roof. So I don't think I'm going to talk a whole lot. I'll talk through this first part. I'll let you continue to watch it. But you go ahead and anchor the first, and you could do the first three because it's a rather straight shot. And you can line them up, and then you can do the rest of them. But whatever works for you, try it the first time if you just want to do one tab first and then the next tab. So the biggest thing here is making sure you're putting them in the order you want to. And the reason I start with the solid panel and not the front is when you do your last closure of an edge, sometimes it doesn't close as well as the one as you're going along because you might just have it maybe off just a smidgen. So we'd rather that be in the back than in the front. So that's why I start in the back. Sometimes I don't remember to do that, but it's a good tip. So you can watch the rest of this and I'll be back. So we're almost to the end now. Now that we finished the base of the house, now we'll add the panels. So they were gently curved, so if you haven't curved the bottom, you can curve them a little bit. The thing is, when I said earlier about putting the vellum on the inside, when you're matching them up, you're not going to see it matched up, but you can kind of see inside. So when you're putting it on, like this one, we'll start with the ones with the cutout. And you could add a little glue, dab a little glue on that in between the leaves if you wanted it to stick a little bit better. But we want to be careful because you don't want it to hit the vellum. So I just added glue to the top and bottom. I know I'm off screen a little bit, but just like I did on the top, and a little bit so on the edges. So it's the same as the roof. The difference is, before I really apply pressure, I'm going to look inside to make sure it's lined up. So the cut is lined up, because I didn't do that. So I'm just kind of pulling it off. And then you can see inside. I tried to show on the video. Anyways, you can look inside and make sure that the edges match up. But if you want it easier, you can go ahead and put the vellum on the inside. And then you can, great, because most of this is flat, you can flip it on its side and apply pressure against the table. The only place you can't is where the curve is, but that helps. So I'm putting the ones with the cutouts first. And I'm putting glue on the top, the sides, a little bit more on the top and on the bottom than the sides. And on this one, I'm just going to put really, really light glue here if you don't want those. So all that's going to do is make sure those, when you glue it on, that it glues those little pieces so they don't flap around on the inside. But I don't think it's a big issue because on the inside you're really not going to be maneuvering anything. So if you line up that top and then you kind of look inside and make sure that it's lined up properly, and then once it is, go ahead and apply pressure. So if you have to, I kind of pulled it up a little bit because I wanted to make a minor adjustment. Then just applying pressure on the tops and the sides from inside. And you can reach in to apply pressure on the bottom with your hands on the inside and outside. That's why we didn't put the bottom on yet. So we just continue doing the same thing. So for the rest of the panels, we'll do the similar process. And I do kind of go overkill. I want to make sure, because I do have a tendency to have my panels kind of on curved surfaces bend back up on me. This was kind of a thicker, it was a paper, but it was a cardstock. It was a printed cardstock. So when you're putting cardstock on cardstock, it's more difficult. Sometimes did here. It depends too, especially on textured. Depends on the surfaces that are gluing together. The other tip I'd give you, because I didn't do that on everything, I had to touch it up after the fact, but if you want to ink the edges, I would do so before. On the windows, I should have inked the inside a little bit before I put the vellum on, and as well as the cutout right there, because it does have a white core on this printed paper, obviously. So I did end up touching it up a bit with chalk, not chalk ink. And the reason I use chalk is because I can erase it. But I used a little chalk and just kind of chalked the edges after the fact. But it's much easier if you do it before you put it on. So we're getting that solid panel, and the last one is the door. So that one, you just need to make sure that there's glue on the top and bottom is normal, but you want to make sure you have a good line of glue around the frame and on the bottom, because that bottom part will be likely to pop up. So that's one thing you're going to want to apply pressure, get that in place, and get your fingers inside and outside to, once you have it lined up, and apply pressure around that door. So it might take a second to get it lined up, so you might want to start from the bottom, which I found out the hard way. There are no mistakes, you just adjust quite quickly with glue. And there it is. I'm just going around making sure everything was secure, not flipping up. So now we're going to go ahead and add the door frame and the window frames. I did end up putting a little sign on the final design, but that's not included with the file. It was something that I created in a Silhouette Studio with the Silhouette design. Kind of modified it a bit, but you could really put anything, whatever you want to put. I want it to be Thanksgiving themed because it's going to be part of my table decor. I wanted to have a little bit of Thanksgiving decoration for us in the US. We have that later this month. So just line it up. But anyways, you could put anything at the top if you have any kind of fall things, or you can put any word you want. You could put the name of your family, or if you're giving it their family, or give thanks if you want to do that, or there's a lot of fall sayings too, if you just want it for a plain fall decor. Of course, you could decorate it in any, even though it's an Acorn, you could put any color paper on it to make it other seasons too. So that's up to you, seasons or holidays. Although I see an Acorn as an autumn or fall thing. So the windows are wider at the bottom versus the top. So I'm just putting a light bead of glue on the back and then lining it up carefully so that edge of the window on the panel will line on up to the inner edge of this little frame cutout. So we're on the home stretch. It's almost done, except for any kind of special touches you want to add to it. Some people might want to add little flowers to it too, some fall flowers. I'm sure I've seen so many variations of different houses. They're very creative people out there. It's fun to watch. So just get that last window frame on. And then now we just have to add the bottom piece. So on the bottom, you can go ahead, and we're going to go ahead and anchor one tab. And then once we anchor one tab to the bottom panel, we'll go ahead and fold over and glue the remaining tabs. So I'm going to make sure the texture's on the outside from the bottom. But I want to carefully line that up to the tab fold and in that section. So it'll fold over just nicely. So once you add a little bead of glue to all the sides, you can go ahead and carefully line it up and apply pressure to the tabs as you fold it down. And I just go around, and I usually start from the edges closest to the tab that I anchored, and then just carefully guide it around. Sometimes you have to push in the sides a little bit to adjust, but once you get the tabs basically in place, you can go ahead and flip over and apply pressure from within. That pretty much finishes the house off. Other than the additions you might want to add for something above the door, if you want to do a little sign, or leaves would look nice up there too. But I did make a little sign. I did this with Silhouette Studio, and you can add a battery operated tea light or a candle or fairy lights. It lights it up beautifully. I hope you enjoyed this project. I certainly did. It was challenging, but I enjoyed it immensely. Thank you so much for watching.